What is up? Tuna, Elishar, and Grimro, and we're here joined together for episode 4 of the BlastCast. So this one's gonna be more of sort of a recap of what we went through last week with Chris Wilson, and we're gonna be, you know, Elishar's gonna be joining us within the conversation since he wasn't able to join us for the podcast itself. Yeah, we just wanted to talk about some of the topics, maybe go in depth into some of the things, more relaxed approach to, you know, basically discussing the things. So we don't have Chris Wilson here, sort of intimidating us, I guess, with his very, very strong presence. Yeah. What's up, Grim? What's up, Ellie? How are you?
Yo, what up?
Yo, I'm good.
I think the Chris Wilson podcast definitely set quite a lot of things straight moving forward, especially for the future of the game. Right, there was a lot of discussion about 3.16 and 3.17.
Yeah,
and so much so that it's kind of like solidified a lot of things that just are happening. Like for example, I don't know, he just kept talking about the defensive rework. So like 3.16 is getting the defensive rework. So that's like massive, right?
yeah. How big do you think defensive rework is gonna make a difference when the monsters themselves are kind of crazy?
Well, I don't know. It's going to be difficult to say. Like, what does defensive rework even mean, right? And in the context of like a league scenario, it's going to be pretty dramatic. So does that mean like they're going to bring really overpowered defenses in line and buff up underused ones, or what? Could it be an armor rework? I mean, it could literally be anything.
By in line, do you mean like nerf them, or?
Yeah. So I mean, if you think back to like the bow league, for example. They brought a lot of the really bad bow skills up, and they brought a lot of the really overperforming bow skills down. So I imagine it's probably going to be something like that. So they'll probably bring Fortify down. They'll probably bring maybe Wind Dancer down, and then they'll bring other undesirable kind of like defensive types up.
That sounds good, but yeah, I mean that sounds good. But I'd be scared of them bringing stuff down, because like what they did to glancing blows is like already pretty like. Right? Like nobody even takes glancing blows anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall the takeaway should be that most characters feel a lot more tankier and have more access to defense. That's what I would hope would be the takeaway. You should be able to build a much more rounded character without having to go all over the tree and stuff like that. What do you reckon, Elisha?
I think that right now the problem that we have is that we can't really get defenses early. We can get them late game. There's a lot of good, really, really good timeless duels. For example, the one that makes your elemental damage converted into chaos, and then with small clusters you can like get 90% max res, and then you can mitigate so much of that damage. Or like you can get really good corruption and mitigate through corruption, or like implicits on shield, or like other face damage taken as any element on helmet and stuff. Like there's so many ways to mitigate later on if you want to get them and if you want to invest into them. But early on, if you're like just starting into maps, there's like nothing. You have like a flask, like an armor flask, or like it's really, really hard to get like early defenses, I feel like.
How much did they nerf
need to bring up
by?
Definitely. Yeah.
You bring up that point. How much did they actually nerf Granite by? Sorry for interrupting. But I do completely agree with you there, actually. And it's also, don't you feel it's also because by half, yeah, holy. Don't you also feel like it's also because you need to squeeze out more damage early league?
Yeah, we definitely need more damage. On my build, if you don't have like a skill that has really, really high base damage, like for example, Spectral Shield Throw or any of the meta skills like Forbidden Right, that scales off of life as well and has high base, it's really hard to get damage early. I was playing Lightning Trap and I was kind of struggling in red tier maps. But once you have really good gear, the nerfs to damage is still, you just one-shot everything anyway once you have really good gear. But like when you're starting out, the progression is way slower, I feel like, unless you're playing like a really good skill.
But to give some context as well, like the way we play is a little bit, let's say it's not really like how many people play, right? We like to really rush into red tier maps and things, so we'll find ourselves there within the first maybe 12 hours, right? In red tiers.
Yeah.
So in regards to us maybe like struggling to find the damage, it's only because of like how accelerated our progress is in that regard. So maybe this wouldn't really apply to everyone, but what Eddie's trying to say here is that like if you are pushing so far and so fast into the Atlas, then yeah, you're gonna be squeezed for damage in that regard. But essentially, not everyone's gonna find this issue.
Yeah, if you stop and actually gear correctly and wait for the market to be a little bit more alive and you can just buy items from the market, you can get damage easily. But if you're starting on like semi-SSF, you just have a tabula and like random floor rares, you're going to struggle in progression on most builds, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see maybe more accessibility to physical damage mitigation and chaos resistance as like my main 2 highlighted points from the defensive rework. But other than that, I think, it's probably fine.
They did make the chaos bases better this league. Like the chaos rings are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're actually, they give like...
But that is damage, not defenses, right? That's chaos damage. And also they're pretty rare, the Iolite rings. Oh wait, they buff the rings, right? They buff the implicit on the resist as well. True.
And the boots, yeah. They got buff the fugitive boots.
Yeah, but the boots are really rare. You're not going to get them early, right?
The boots are like
True,
2 tones.
yeah.
So.
They're kind of rare. You need to actually farm in a specific zone in the Atlas to get them.
But
The
Fizz, I
Atlas
completely agree
specific
with you.
zone. Yeah.
I personally, if I'm playing on the right or top side of the tree, I have no way of actually mitigating Fizz outside of like dodge, right?
Yeah, and like dodge is like such a weird defense. You basically, if you have like 30% dodge, you like get hit like all the time. But if you have like 75 and evasion, you're like invincible. So it's not like a smooth like, oh, I'm tanky or like upper curve. It's like exponential. So
You can't just dip your toes into it either. It's like either you go all in on dodge or you not worth, right?
It makes you feel like you have to go raider as well, which is not great.
But you got small clusters that can actually really facilitate you being in different ascendancy. But we just don't choose to use them because damage. Yeah, dodge clusters.
Another thing about defenses that not many people are talking about is that they removed so many ailment immunities from so many ascendancies. Like, for example, Pathfinder, before had complete immunity. Now it's like only on use of a flask. I would have liked more if they kept like 50% like Raider. Now Raider is in such a good spot because not only you get a lot of evasion and dodge, you also get like 50 element immunity, and it gets you so close to get 200% capped that is like the choice for most builds because it just has so much quality of life that other builds don't have.
I'm not really too concerned about ailment immunities. They've already talked about putting it on the Pantheons as well as some auras. Okay. So, for me at least, when I'm like playing Deadeye right now, I don't really have full ailment immunity, like, the whole avoid. So, like, the only one that really matters to me is freeze. You can pretty much like play through ignite and shock and stuff like that. You're gonna get one shot every now and then. It's not ideal, but freeze is the main one.
That's for us.
Yeah, you can definitely get it on a flask easily. Yeah, if you play softcore, if you play hardcore, you're kind of screwed. You kind of need the element immunity, or eventually you're gonna die once, and you're like, okay, I just remake the character now.
Oh, yeah, this is BlastCast, no hardcore cast.
I know.
We can still laugh at them though.
That's true. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the defensive rework. Hopefully we see some more flexibility in the way that you can not get one shot as much. That'd be good. But the other thing that's changing in 3.16 is actually the Atlas. So this is a pretty big change, pretty massive topic. So we're going from eight regions to 4, 164 maps to 100, 32 watchstones to 16, and we got God knows what's happening to the Atlas passives.
Yeah. The one thing I'm concerned about in regards to maps being restricted is who decides what fun we're getting this league, right? It's gonna feel like, I just don't want it to feel like when we're waiting for the Zana mods and we're like, is Beyond on there? And then it's not on there, and we're like, well, another non-Beyond league, dog cleave, and I feel like I hope we don't get that with the Atlas where it's just like all the good T16s are just good. And yeah.
I think that having the zone condensed into 4 might bring some crazy strategy where like you can get like, for example, Beyond and Delirium maybe together, or like some really good mechanics together. That might be kind of fun. But also it will like if they don't change the favorite system, you can only favorite 3 maps in one zone, right? So you're gonna have like one zone where you're on T14, one zone T15, one zone T16, right? In the new, and then one zone where you can't really. I mean, you can favorite, but
We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't really know how they're gonna implement it. But if they leave it like it is now, it's gonna be kind of weird, because you only have like
good.
3 different. Like right now, you can have like up to 8 different strategies in your Atlas. You can do like Blight, Lirathane. You can have Ewar Camlet. You can do like Syndicate or Blight or Harvest, or you can do a lot of things. I don't know. You would have to like respec over and over if you want to change strategies on next league.
Yeah.
Instead, now you can just play another map, and you already have this Watchstone set up and everything.
This is a topic I covered in my most recent video, but just on the map sustain thing. So you are right. To kind of break it down a little bit further. So obviously we're going from a massive reduction in maps. So the first question is, do you think that they're going to keep all of the unique maps in the map pool? Because they're going to rotate stuff like, the maps that are associated with those uniques out. So is there going to be a world in which, Courtyard's not in the pool, so you can't get Vinkdar Square? What do you guys think of that, first of all?
I don't think so, because that is a vendor recipe, right? You can actually make it with a vendor recipe.
But will it be on the Atlas as like a bonus completion kind of thing?
Right. I don't think that matters that much. But the only thing that really matters is that we have access to the map for the unique.
Yeah.
It does matter though, because so let's say that they keep all 18 unique maps, right? And we have 100 maps on the Atlas right now. That doesn't mean you're getting 100 runnable layouts, right? It means that you're going to get 82 runnable layouts, which is like significantly less. But also for the purpose of sustaining maps, right now, let's just assume that, like the big pool of maps, you take the uniques away. You have like 17.6% chance to drop a map if all tiers were the same with your favorite system. Like if you favorite a map, that's kind of like the chance you get it. Obviously it's higher because, T16s, 15s, and 14s and stuff like that. But in the new Atlas, assuming that we keep all the uniques, it's actually 27.6% chance to drop any given one map that you want. So no matter which way you slice it, it's going to be much higher chance at sustaining the exact layout you want. It is true that if you were favoriting all 8 regions, like it'll actually be a little bit less. But if you were only favoriting, like 4 or 5, it's going to be much more likely that you're going to get maps that you actually want.
Yeah.
So we could be in a world where you could sustain one T16 of your choice. It could work out that way, potentially.
That'd be so good. But we don't know if they keep the favorite system the same, right? We don't know what they're going to do.
They could reduce it.
I think it's funny that the favorite system is in the game only because of like pretty much community pressure, right? Because otherwise, I don't think if they weren't pressured into it, they wouldn't have made the favorite system at all. I don't think.
Yeah, and this was a topic that came up on the interview as well. So from what Chris said, what they're scared of is basically just every player wanting to run one straight line. That was what he said, which I personally don't believe. I don't think that's true. And you made a pretty good counterpoint, Tuna.
I mean, I thought it was a little condescending. Like, big love to Chris, but like the fact that like he thinks all we want is to be like plugged into the matrix and become vegetables. I don't think that's a very good representation of softcore. Like, yeah, we want to min-max, but like that doesn't mean that we want to run Strand all day.
Yeah.
Like, sure, we want to favor good layouts. Like a good one instead of cells. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. I think that with the new Atlas, with the new lower amount of maps, I think we could potentially be in a world which, we have a lot more agency over the maps we want to run. So that's like the main point, which I'm happy about. But kind of talking a little bit more about what you said, Elisha, obviously you're condensing 8 Atlas passive regions to 4. Like unless they remove some, there's going to be a whole lot of juice on one place. Like imagine if you get all the bestiary ones on one place. So you got Great Migration with all of the lucky beasts and red beast duplication. It's like, oh good.
And then you add Wildstones on top of that you get 40% more beasts, or you get them more rare as well. You can choose.
Yeah.
It'll be insane.
So it's either going to be complete insanity or they're going to severely nerf it. I don't know. We'll have to see. What do you reckon?
Or maybe they just split them like evenly, kind of between like all the 4 zones, and it's gonna feel bad for most things. They could also like split a little bit of Beyond in every zone, maybe, or like a little bit of Beasts in every
No.
zone. That would be terrible.
There's no way they would do that. That makes no sense.
I know, but if they condense all of them, it's gonna be crazy.
I hope it's an Alice passive tree rather than it being zone restricted, because that's something I don't like too much about the current Atlas, and being like, oh well, I'm doing Valdo all league because I like this mechanic the most, whatever. Like, I want to have more freedom, so I'd love for there to be like an Atlas passive tree that, yeah, it's expensive to respec, so there's opportunity costs there, but it gives me freedom to run where I want. I don't really like being restricted to, in general. I feel like player agency is really important in this regard. And it's also not because I want to run like, oh, I only want to run beach. Because like, one thing that as well I failed to sort of like, I failed to mention when I was talking with Chris about this, is that not every build likes the same layout, right? Like, if I'm playing a Wanderer, I'd like to be in Toxic Sewer, or if I'm playing a Tornado Shot build, then I'd like to be, you know, like, I don't know, Mud Geyser or Beach. Like, it really depends on the builds you like to play. It's also like Race Course is a fun map to run from time to time. Like, there's yeah, we prefer layouts that are not every corner. There's corners and doors and edges and stuff. But that's also because of like, you know, you run cells and you're like 10 more likely to die. Like, than if you were to run a map where shoot ahead. It's just an unpleasant experience to run certain maps. So I feel like that's a little bit of an issue in design of the maps, right? I'll keep it into account that like, oh, Baran has just spawned in my cells map. You know, like, that's a very unpleasant experience regardless of what build you're playing.
It doesn't help that like most league mechanics are, with the exception of Blight, are vastly inferior in indoor maps as well. It's not great either. Like Breach,
Blight,
Legion.
So I would say
Expedition was horrible.
True, yeah. Well, I would say like maybe Ultimatum is fine. Ritual is fine-ish, not really, but like it's more fine. It's more on the fine end. And you got Bestiary is completely fine. Alva's fine. I don't know.
June's okay.
Harvest is fine.
June is fine. Yeah. The thing about June is like she makes a zone, right? Why don't they do that for? I mean, they can't for like Legion. Like, literally use a.
It'd be like a boss room, basically.
Royal World New.
I think it's fine though. I think there should be more mechanics like Blight, which favor kind of indoor maps. That would be more interesting. But you know, I don't really want to play indoor maps anyway.
More like Blight, but less like Blight.
Yeah,
maybe what they could do to improve like indoor maps and like bad layouts is that they make the league mechanics that require a lot of space spawn only in zones where there's more open space. For example, when you do Boreal Chambers and you get the one breach on the bridge and you get like 3 mobs, it feels terrible. But if you get it outside, it's way better. Like, if they actually giving like a smart system of where mechanics should spawn, they have enough space to spawn here, so they spawn here, it would be way better, I feel like.
They like that though. They've said that in the past. Where they're like, I remember when I thought, I don't remember which talk it was that I heard Chris say this, but he was like talking about how he liked Breach in that there's that contrast between like, oh, I get a Breach in this position and it sucks, but then when I find the juicy Breach, I'm like, oh, you know?
Yeah, I mean, from a design perspective, he's right. The bad makes the good feel even better. It's true.
Without the contrast.
As a player, you just want the good, and that makes sense. So that's what our job is to do, to try and min-max. So, I mean, that's how it goes. I think it's still going to be basically, even if it's a complete flop, and we don't get any more powerful. I think overall, it cannot be denied that there is going to be a level of unknown and figuring out with the new Atlas in 3.16. Yeah, and that's the exciting part. You know, there's opportunity. Everyone's going to be kind of sussing it out, trying to figure out what's hot. You know, you might get some crazy fringe cases like when Ritual launched with the Harbingers dropping mirror shards every 20 maps. There's going to be something insane to do, and it's going to be a lot of fun to figure out. So there'll be plenty of content and new stuff to do.
I agree. I'm looking forward to that. That's for sure.
Yeah, when there's like big changes, it's like the most fans of every league because you're like testing everything out. I remember in Ritual, we're like changing Atlas Zone every time we're playing together, and you kept like changing zone. I was buying Watchstones. We got scammed for not 14x Watchstone because we weren't aware, and we were like trying all the strategies. And it's way more fun than just knowing the meta going in and just doing your strategy and just do well from the start.
Actually, that's a really good point. One of the things that's going to be really powerful in the new Atlas is rolling Watchstones, because obviously all of the league mechanics are condensed, and there's going to be half the amount of Watchstones, right? So you can roll way better ones, way easier. Watchstone rollers, stonks.
What do you actually think about Watchstones? What do you actually think about Watchstones? I have a pretty strong opinion about this, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I think the craftable Watchstones are an awesome level of customization. I'm not super duper psyched at how they're created with, just go get 3,000 alterations. not really happy about that, but I think that the game would be significantly more boring without them in the end game.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Ali?
What do you reckon, Ali?
I think that they should give us like our normal Watchstones, like the green ones. I feel like they should just give us those, and then you choose a mod and you just upgrade it over time. That would be so much, like you do Mavens and stuff, or like invitations, and they just get stats. That would be so much nicer than just having to spend like 1 billion alterations on them.
Yeah, alterations are a problem.
It feels so bad when you're just trying to roll the mod and you just have to buy it on the market for like 5x because you're never going to roll it.
I mean, I generally think that's like, there's an opportunity cost to it. And the thing is, they don't depreciate in price over time, but it is a huge barrier to entry for anyone that wants to get in a farming strategy.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I don't like about it, is the barrier to entry, because, for example, like I would never want to farm something if I didn't have Watchstones. And every time I want to try a new farming strategy, it's like, oh, well, let's buy the Watchstones and let's set up the passives and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I don't like about them, is just the fact that like I feel like hamstringed if I don't have all of that stuff. We just keep getting more and more stuff that it sort of becomes I don't know, it sort of becomes a little bit, it's the problem that I have with like mapping in general, where it's like, oh, if I'm running this map and I'm not running for 4 scarabs, then what am I doing? I need to go trade for the scarabs and then all this stuff. It's sort of like you always feel like you're hamstringing yourself if you're not trying to like squeeze out the most. But I guess that's just something that we've taught ourselves to do as min-maxers. So in a way, that's kind of our issue, our psychological issue that players have to overcome. But
I agree. Before we get too much into the next topic, which I'm sure we're kind of almost there. What do you guys think about progression next league? Because obviously we're going from 32 Watchstones to 16. When we're league starting, all of us next league, it's going to be a very different experience. There's only 100 maps on the Atlas. It's going to be significantly shorter to get to like where you want to go, especially if you're already using Leapfrog as your Atlas strat. Like getting to your first Cirrus could be, in the first 24 hours for like anyone who's like going hard, right? That's kind of like where we're going to be at. Like, it's like very quick.
But it's not next league, it's league after, right?
No, 3.16 is the Atlas rework. The shrink, where they're crushing it down.
Sure, it wasn't 3.17?
No, definitely 3.16, 100%.
Okay. Oh. I figured they would do that with the expansion.
No, so in the expansion, well, we'll cover this topic first, but fair to say the expansion's throwing everything out. That's what Chris said, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
3.16.
Okay.
3.16 is the kind of band-aid, which is the reduction in the Atlas size, and then 3.17 is the complete overhaul, which is the Christmas patch.
Yeah, I got a bit confused. Yeah, that's cool. Even more hype then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But sorry, what was the question?
The question is like, what do you think of progression given like the condensed Atlas? Like next league, like you're gonna be zooming, right?
What do you think?
Yeah, it's gonna be so much faster, man. Maybe I don't know if like by the time you finish Atlas, you usually have like enough currency to like transition into bossing, if they remove a lot of the maps, you might be able to like complete the Atlas really early, that you won't have like enough currency to actually transition into bossing, or like have an actual Atlas strategy, and you probably just have to farm for a while before you get to like the next step where you just farm currency. You might have to like farm a little bit, just farm random maps. Maybe the meta will change a bit. Unless you have like a really, really strong skill that can boss really early on a budget. You might have like some cases where you just can't. There's going to be like a rough transition maybe from mapping to bossing. Maybe you don't have enough damage.
From my perspective, like strictly, this is like obviously not everyone's experience, but from my experience, I generally get to A8, like decent amount of completion around like day 2, day 3. And I'm still bossing at that point because you kind of had to, because like completing the Atlas was such a chore. Getting Awakener 8 was such a mission.
Yeah, true.
Right. And now with this new Atlas, I feel like it's almost like, it's going to be so quick, so easy, so painless. Like I might almost just want to start a mapper, a mapper like with like some sort of bossing capability, and not be on the boss hype train. Because if you can get the equivalent of Awakener 8, fairly quickly, you can be farming Guardian maps. You can, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't thought about it because now we're kind of conditioned into doing bosses because, the Atlas just takes too long and you have to farm money before you get to a mapper. But how do you get enough currency to actually like map efficiently? Like,
well, you can play like Toxigram and stuff, right?
You're not gonna transition in like a Blasters directly. You have to play something like a League Star that kind of maps fast. You're not gonna
Glad,
be like
SST.
Yeah,
good too.
You can play something like that. Yeah, SST is good as well if they don't nerf it.
Yeah, they definitely could. I mean, I think you want to play like, I would definitely err on the side of a faster mapping character as opposed to a bosser next league. A mapping character that can do like stuff like Sirius is probably what I would target next league.
Yeah,
I agree.
Sure. Yep.
I always thought that even the current Atlas, I still prefer that because I spend 99% of my time in maps. Anytime I started a boss killer, I just felt like, my time in maps just felt not great. My time in bosses felt good, but that represented like less than 1% of the time I spent on league starts. So.
Yeah, I think they're also like talking a little bit about like they identified that the game feels quite top heavy, so like that could be interpreted as the Maven passives potentially not being as brutal to acquire. So that's the central ones, the ones like that unlock the extra second slot. So we might see some sort of like movement on that as well. Hopefully, we'll see though.
I'm really glad that we have the master missions as like white, yellow, and red, but I feel like once you get into red maps, you're very, very much incentivized to like never spend your master missions at the moment because of like the fact that everything's top heavy and the fact that you're like, I'm in reds now. Now I need to get like, there's like a huge gap between like just entering reds and when you have a zone set up with wash zones and all your Atlas passives, if you know what I mean. Where then that's when you want to start using your master mission again.
I feel like the only master mission that you're like conditioning to not using is Alva. You can use June early because Mastermind is nice, gives a lot of rewards, and you also drop veiled items, which you unlock crafts with, which is really important early. And beasts are always nice. They just add mobs to the map. Like I spam beasts whenever I have them in my maps. And Zana is way better early than it is later. The only one that you're not incentivized in using, I think, is Alva. The other ones are fine. And Delve, not many people do Delve, so usually you just don't do that because it's underwhelming. Unless you go for Delve, then it's really good.
Yeah.
But Alva is definitely the one that you always save for Zeus.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Delve actually? Because Delve is getting a rework, Tina. So they're basically shortcutting 6K all the way to 1500. That's what they said. They're moving the rewards, but they're making it way harder. So it's going to ramp up in difficulty significantly quicker. Does that kind of interest you at all? Are you gonna check out Delve next league? Either of you actually, because you're both delving.
Yeah, I mean, if it's good, then yeah, for sure. But it has to be good. They have to do the scaling right, because otherwise, it's, even if they like squeeze it down, that changes nothing in terms of scaling, right? It always ends up just being like, oh, just plays the HP. But yeah,
Yeah,
if
but
it's good, it's good. Then I'll run it.
at the same time, like, right, the 6K grind is like way shorter, right? So you could, like, in theory, like, come up with a really good delve build and, you know, spend a week or two, and then you're at maximum depth, you know, without having to burn as many resources to get to the good stuff.
Are you at maximum depth though? Because maximum depth is still gonna be 6K.
Yeah, but the rewards of 6K are apparently going to be at 1500. Well, that actually raises an interesting point. So if it still goes to 6K theoretically, and the scaling is like just like 6K is at 1500, does that mean 6K is now 4 times as good? I don't know.
Maybe, but the issue with delve is it's never really. I mean, it depends on the delver, I suppose. But it's for people that cared about the competition. It's always just been about competing. It's not been about like the rewards. So essentially, it doesn't matter whether they squeeze it down to 1K. If there isn't like a wall where people just can't get past it, then we're just gonna go to 6K anyways. And
Yep.
you know, so
Yeah.
so it's all in the scaling.
That does introduce the next topic, which is pretty interesting, is Orbotz. I don't really have too much of an opinion on this. I've played with Orbotz in the past. Like, it was probably like, I think the last time I seriously played with an Orbot was Legion League. So I don't really have too much of an opinion, but you guys have delved like in a duo. I think both of you guys played together. What's your take on the Orbot nerf? So from what I heard from Chris, that shit's getting deleted. Pretty much. That's what I heard. From my perspective, obviously that wasn't verbatim, but it sounded like you're not going to be Orobotting anywhere close to what you're doing now.
I personally
I
feel
mean,
like
delve Orbotz at the moment are already kind of active. You have to use Frostwall. You have to use like if you're a Necro, you do like the corpses so they shock the enemies around. You still have like some active support, I feel like. It might still be okay. Like, even if they nerf it, there's way, like, even if they nerf auras, there's other ways. You can, like, shock support. I don't know. You can do other stuff, maybe. You can go with Kingmaker. You can still buff the carry, I feel like.
I think it's still scuffed, but it's just about the amount of power
It's going to be worse for sure. But
they don't have to do any of that stuff to be useful, right? They only do that stuff because otherwise it'd be bored as hell.
Yeah.
To be completely honest with you.
Yeah. No, we're talking about bringing in new mechanical skills, so mechanical support skills, like you recommended in the interview. That's what prompted the question, actually, Tuna. So stuff like, I think I've seen a Pyrian do reverse knockback, Vol Cyclone kind of action where they like suck all the mobs up.
Yeah.
I think that could be reasonably interesting.
And
more
you can see
like
that
Frostwall.
MP was having so much fun when he was doing that, which is something that struck me as well. It's like supports want to do that sort of stuff, man. That's what's fun. You don't necessarily have to just be there to provide a lot of defensive and offensive boosts. Like, yeah, sure, you have to provide enough to be relatively, like, for example, if you come into a map and it's just like twice as hard to kill mobs for the carry, then there's no point in having you, right? Regardless of what mechanics provide. So that's going to be a fine line between that, where it still has to be worth to bring one, but not like 500% more damage.
I would argue that right now, without like, really, really fine tuning the setup and making it so that you have like really high levels of juice, it's actually not worth it to bring a friend or a second character. Like, if you're not like using 4 scarabs and stuff like that, you're pretty much better off both playing solo from my perspective, just because of the way the league mechanics function with their reward structure. So this is going to make that even harder. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Chris did mention that he wants to make PoE more multiplayer friendly, so maybe there's going to be something there. But right now, I would say next patch is going to feel pretty rough to play with your friend.
They did a pretty good job in Ultimatum, but nothing since, really. I mean, this league hasn't really been, that good, so.
For group play, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, one other thing coming to 3.16, which I think we spoke a little bit about on the last podcast, is they are basically saying 100% there's going to be new aspirational content in the game.
Pog?
So I don't know what it's going to be.
If it's going to be for 3.16 or 7. They didn't really specify on that.
Chris, when he was talking about the 3.16 how it's going to be the biggest patch ever, and he was talking about like timeline and like how much they have to do. He mentioned that like he rattled off all the things that are going to be in 3.16. Defensive rework was one, Orbotz was one, and aspirational content is another thing they're getting in there.
The Ubers were in 3.16.
I wouldn't expect all of them in there, or maybe even not any of them, but I would probably say there's going to be something because they have identified that, new endgame content is something that keeps players around. And he talked about how the highest retention leagues in the interview were their best ones. So I imagine we're going to probably be getting some sort of new aspirational content. They did already talk about the Delirium Orb drop buff, which is going to be, potentially giving us a little bit more juice, which could be interesting. But, we'll have to see, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we definitely need aspirational content because at this point of the league, mid-league, I already can't find anything that I really want to do. Like I tried 100% Dali and it's not worth it. It's not, you don't get your money back from the Dali orbs unless you run it in like full team or quantity or something crazy. Like every Dali orb is like 20C, 25 or whatever. And using 5-on-1 map is not going to be cost effective. It's just going to be better to add 1 on 5 maps and run 5 different maps, and you just get the mobs 5 times. I feel like we don't have any incentive to push our characters right now.
That's intended though. That's like when Grim asked the question to Chris, like, was that ever intended for people to be able to repeat the 5 orb content like that?
Yeah.
Like Chris's answer was straight up, yes, but it was never supposed to be a thing that you had on farm. It was more of a thing that you did if you wanted to go in with a crazy character and see if you could challenge yourself against the hardest content.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Essentially, at the point where it's at right now, I feel like they're very happy with that, with 5 orb.
Yeah.
But do you think that having other content that is less rewarding is better than having easier content that is more rewarding? Like, you
Yes.
invest more money into it. His philosophy is usually the one that the more you invest into a map, the more you get back. Does it make sense that you waste like 100C and you get nearly nothing from it?
The problem with that shows that regardless of anything, Chris doesn't control how much money you make in the game, right?
Yeah,
They
true.
control what the rewards
It's the
are.
market, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't control how much a Delirium Orb costs. The reason you're not making your money back is because A, they're more profitable to do on a case-by-case
Yep.
basis. So like 1
Makes
is better
sense.
to do than 5, which I'm pretty sure that's the case. Like doing 1 orb is always generally worth it, but doing 5 is like not as good as just doing 5
Yeah.
maps with 1.
Only
And then you're
groups,
also
right?
competing against groups who are MFing
True.
the Delirium mobs. So that's going to be really tough as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
makes
an
sense.
opportunity cost. That's what the economy is like. Basically, it's run by these opportunity costs, right? You're never gonna be able to compete against people that get like 250% more quant out of their 5 orb delirium. So they're the ones that dictate the price. So in regards to like whether it's worth it for you to run it or not, it's never gonna be worth it. So I think that's sort of what they're trying to do with tackling with supports and stuff and trying to make that less worth it. But I mean, so back to what I said is like, yes, I think you shouldn't exponentially get more out of the more you invest in Path of Exile. I think, yes, it's good to an extent. It should be pretty linear, but I don't think the divide between someone that just wants the map and someone that just wants to go full juice, I don't think it should be as radical as it's been in the past.
Yeah, makes
Personally.
sense.
Because why do we need like 5 mirrors and dudes like struggling to make like 1x? Like come on. It gets a
That's always
little
gonna
bit
be the case.
ridiculous.
But my
definitely.
point was more like, for example, you can like spend 20-30x and make a build viable to do 20% daily, right? And just do Nemesis 3 or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
which is probably like the hardest content you need to do in maps right now. Like you don't need your character to be able to do more than 20% daily, I feel like, if you want to farm maps. Like after you reach the point, what do you do? Do you just keep farming 20% daily for the whole league? I feel like that's so stale. I just don't like that type of content. Just farming the same amount of content, the same, like exactly the same for the whole league.
Yeah,
I feel like the only content that scales now is Delve. There's nothing else. It feels kind of limiting.
That's why we brought up the topic we did. I think Tuna asked the question like, would Chris ever consider something akin to a Mythic Plus from WoW, which is essentially content which is completely, well, hopefully completely skill-based, which rewards a well-rounded character, which scales infinitely, but, within reason. That's basically what we were asking him. Unfortunately, he didn't know what Mythic Plus was, so that question kind of didn't land. But I think that's what you're kind of alluding to. Pardon?
He's gonna do his research though, which is the main thing that we could get out of that, right?
Yeah, we got an opportunity to kind of explain a little bit about what we were after, and we also had quite an extensive chat with Bex about this topic, and talking a little bit about it as well. So I think that there is hope, although I don't think we should expect this anytime before 3.17 or even maybe even later on.
Even beyond, I think there's already so much they got to do. I think we need to curb our expectations a little bit in what they can accomplish in such a little time frame. We're pretty used to getting so much content in 3-month cycles already that we expect them to literally fix the game overnight. We'll just be disappointed at the end of the day.
Well, that's what they're attempting to do in 3.16. They're trying to basically take everything and just fix it all in one patch, right? That's pretty insane. I have no idea if they're going to be able to do it. As you heard, Chris is worried about how much is ending up in 3.16.
Yep.
I think we were originally meant to get guild halls and stuff like that. Apparently that's going. We won't be getting that. We'll be getting more content.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the guild halls.
We definitely need more.
Yeah, I think content is priority for sure.
Yeah. I think we almost got to the topic, but I think it's important to talk about, and I'm really interested on hearing your perspective on it, Elisha, because you went in the interview. But essentially, trade. This is a big topic for us. So Chris Wilson, we talked a lot about crafting, a lot about items on the interview. We asked a lot of questions and tried to dig pretty deep on it. But a lot of the responses came back to trade. So in the argument about determinism versus RNG, Chris Wilson and by extension G2G is fine with randomness due to the existence of trade being the ultimate form of determinism. You can either try and craft an item by chance, or you can just straight up buy it from another player, and he sees that as okay. What are your guys' opinion on that?
I think that trade is fine as long as you're playing something meta. If you're playing something really off meta, for example, Tuna was playing SST at the start of the league on an evasion int base, right? The shield, and he was playing crit. No one was playing that really early in the league, so that even Never Sings filter wasn't even showing the shield that he needed. So there wasn't any on the market. I don't know if there's nothing on the market for your build. Is it really okay?
Don't get me wrong, though. I love that shit. I really like having to stuff for my own. So I don't know. I think that's good. That your decision can sort of affect the market in that way, right? If someone finds a good build and it becomes popular, then yeah, economy will adapt. I think it's good. But in regards to the whole determinism thing, it's I do agree with Chris. But I also think that's not exactly fun gameplay. You know what I mean? Yeah, that is the ultimate form of determinism, and you just buy it. But on the other hand, it's that fun. I don't know, and that's another a big part of why I think SSF is in this regard a lot more fun than Trade League, because you have to go in with a completely different mindset, right? Where you're
yeah,
I'm going to be doing this all on my own, and I'm going to have to look out for these things and put this item based on my filter, prepare, craft ahead before I do all my stuff, and I can roll into the build. Whereas in Trade League, it's more about sort of gratification in that regard. So I don't know, in terms of Trade League and resort always going back to trade for defined determinism, I don't think that's good gameplay personally, but I do agree that the ultimate form of determinism at the end of the day. You can't argue with that, right? There was so many points Chris was bringing up that you're just well, shit. Yeah, you're right, but it doesn't make me like it more. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So the follow-up to this discussion in the interview was essentially so we understood the point about what he was saying, but we pushed it a little bit further. We were asking, okay, so what about for the players who do want to craft their own items? And that actually came back to trade as well. The argument was that, there's not enough accessibility to materials. There's not enough, access to kind of like crafting methods. And that is a byproduct of trade itself, due to the fact that more wealthy players, more knowledgeable players can buy up all the materials and craft with those more efficiently, essentially pushing out anyone else who wants to use those materials for themselves. And the example that was given, and we actually have one of those crafters sitting here with us, the example that was given is, imagine a player trying to craft their own quiver. And then on the flip side, imagine a player crafting quivers for money. The player crafting quivers for money has identified that there's 3 usable quivers that they could craft using materials, and they will sell all 3 of them if they hit them with that material. The player who's trying to craft their quiver on their own is only trying to hit 1 quiver. So the player crafting for profit is 3 times as efficient with those materials, and that's going to dictate the price and influence how much they cost. So there's never going to be a world in which it's going to be profitable or worthwhile for you as a player to craft what you want unless it doesn't exist, which is basically a massive problem with the game. What's your opinion on that, Elisha, as the culprit?
Okay, my opinion would be that if they want to craft a quiver for themselves, they just buy multiple bases, they keep spamming with the essences or whatever they farm, like whatever they're spamming with the materials that they buy, until they get something sellable, and then they sell it, and with the money they make, they buy other materials, and they keep going until they hit the actual item that they need. That's what I was doing. I was crafting quivers over and over until I wanted gain as extra 1 arrow and wed, all 3 elemental damage with attacks, all 3 T1 prefixes. And I kept getting T1 life, T1 arrow, and T1 elemental damage with attacks. So I was selling those for 40, 50, 60x or whatever they were going for. And I would just keep spamming over and over. I never hit it, but I could have just bought one.
You always recoup your cost, yeah.
You always recoup your cost if you actually craft and you sell sellable stuff. Also, the market price doesn't always go based on the actual value of an item, or like how much money you can make from it, because there's a lot of people that just want the perfect item for their build, and they're gonna spend mirrors on it and just completely buy the whole market of one item. For example, your essences when you were trying to craft your bow. Or I did the same for my bow. Yeah. Or like if a delver just wants to get like the perfect item, he's gonna buy like all of the market of one specific thing until he can get the item that he wants, because there's no availability on those most of the times, and you actually have to make it yourself because it's really like niche or really specific. So the market price is not always dictated by how much profit you make from those items. It's also based on if people need it for their builds, and there's none on the market.
I'll be honest.
It becomes...
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say it becomes a big issue. Go ahead.
Right. I think the way that we're saying this is that this is a game problem, right? The fact that there's always going to be like economies of scale and people make stuff cheaper than you can make it. But I'd like to propose this argument. Is it really a game problem or is it a player problem? Like, is it because, someone can make this cheaper, so I should deprive myself of the fun of crafting because I know that I could just buy it for cheaper? Is that a game problem or is that a player problem?
Well, I think it's well, for starters, I'm just going to go ahead and say this is basically a cursed problem. There's no way to solve this, and that's what Chris Wilson was explaining to us and made apparent. But at the same time, you have to understand, I would say, is that a lot of players are just trying to, get a leg up, trying to make some currency, and they don't have a wealth of money. Yep. They might not even have the tools available to them to understand what's good or not. Like, try crafting without a weekend PoE trade or a price checking macro. That becomes way more difficult, doesn't it? So I think that there is a lot of systemic issues just with trade itself. Overall. So I don't actually think it's a solvable issue. And one of the things that came up was, of course, harvest, as well as, just why not just make some of the materials untradeable or something like that. And obviously that's pretty undesirable, but that is pretty much the only way you can solve this problem. Remove the ability to trade for the resources, and then no longer will they, be like just flogged off for money.
I think that's bad. I think it's terrible.
I think it's bad too.
Yeah. If you remove trade, you remove market, you remove player power, you remove player interaction. That just, in my opinion, that's what kills Trade League. So there'd be no, like, if you remove those things, then I'm not gonna play Trade League. What's the point? I'll just go play SSF.
Yeah, I think they should keep that stuff tradable. One thing I wanted to talk about was that basically now, if you want to craft, you don't really have any resources. For example, let's say you want to do a suffix to prefix on your bestiary, right? And if you're a new player, it just says you want remove a suffix and you add a prefix. That's pretty simple, right? But you don't know that it respects metacraft. You don't know that the item level on the beast matters. You don't know so many things that if they just add a tooltip or like explain it to you, it will be so much easier. At the moment, crafting is so punishing and it's not challenging. It's like, if you don't know something, there's no way you're gonna make an item.
But you explain it to them, right? As a content creator that crafts.
Yeah, but usually it feels so bad if like if you don't have the tools for like actually playing the game, you don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't think you should go like on a third party to learn how to play the game. I don't know. You should just learn by.
I mean, that's a conflict of opinion, but I think the game shouldn't hold your hand. That's what creates like a big gap between people that are knowledgeable and people that are not, right? That's the whole point of like back in the day when we didn't have the internet. You'd go out and you buy the guide to how to complete the game, right? Like if the game tells you how to play, then that is the best way to play, and there's no discovery, and there's no like mastery. So without mastery and without discovery, we're just playing theme park. And if we're playing theme park, it's not Path of Exile.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they should just give you everything just laid out and you should just know everything, but like the basic mechanics of how a beast interacts. Like for example, they change this stuff by league to league basis a lot of times, and like experienced crafters, like for example, I have a friend that makes a lot of mirror items. He has to like go on standard, do research for like the first few days, and just spend a lot of money on standard to just test like how the beast interact that patch. Because if they do a small change, the whole crafting system just completely changes.
But that's cool though, right?
And a lot of times it's also bugged.
Yeah, I mean that's different, but I think that's fucking cool. I don't know.
I think the crafting system definitely does have a lot of quirks. I think there's things that are not consistent. For example, what is it like the harvest rerolls don't respect like cannot roll caster and attack and stuff like that. Like it's like there's not much uniformity, and a lot of the rules are very specific, and there's like it is quite confusing in a lot of cases because it just doesn't make sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Even really experienced players sometimes have no idea how it works because it can change completely from one link to another, and they say nothing. It's so frustrating. You actually have to like waste money to learn how the system works so that you can actually use the system. Instead, if they told you how the system worked before, even if it's complex and it's hard and you can like do tricks and stuff, if you knew how it worked beforehand, you would just do like educated guesses or like you would know what you could get from the like what the outcome could be.
I definitely agree that they should be explaining like if they change something in regards to like meta mods or stuff like that, they have to mention that in patch notes. But if they introduce a new system, like say when the Awaken Orb came out, like the amount of like brains clashing together to figure out how something works, I think that's fucking awesome. I think that's really cool, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting as well. The only issue I have is when they change things and then you have to like dig through patch notes and then it turns out it wasn't in the patch notes and then it's like, oh, okay.
See, that's
it can be quite frustrating
for sure. Yeah, like what Elishar is mentioning that like, oh, one league one thing works and then you go to do it the next league and it doesn't work. Then it's like,
yeah, it's like it changes by league to league and you have no idea why it doesn't work sometimes. Yeah, that is so frustrating.
And then there's the scenarios in which they have it in, it's working in a league. There's a bunch of YouTube videos on how it works, and then they hotfix it. They don't put in the patch notes, and then it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay. It's pretty rough, and it definitely does happen quite a few times.
Yeah, that is the frustrating part about the crafting system. If they fix that, I think a lot more people will be inclined to actually play and like try to craft their own stuff, even though it's not always cost efficient to do that.
Yeah. One of the other topics that came up as well was the tradability of harvest and ashling. So as we discussed earlier, limiting the tradability of crafting is GGG's only tool against, basically making it so anyone actually uses their stuff themselves instead of selling it. Which obviously no one likes that you can't trade these things. Would you like to see more of this in the future? Should they keep trying to battle against the inevitable tide of trade, or do you just think, throw in the towel, just let everyone trade everything?
Okay, I feel you want to go to now, or do I go?
You can go.
Okay, so what I feel like is the only thing limiting like people bulk crafting and just making infinite profit is that there's a time sink in like buying crafts right now. You have to go on TFT, talk to people, buy the craft, and get a service, and that takes time, right? That's why some really big crafters hire other people to craft for them. And like, for example, I was hired by Jacob like a few weeks ago, and he was like, I pay you half an exalt each craft you do. This was in Harvest days, and just buy as many crafts as you want. You know how the items are done, right? Because I already know how the crafts are done. And he would just pay me half an X for like every craft that I was buying, and I could buy like, I don't know, 50, 60 craft an hour if I was going fast, and I was making mad bank. But like, if you actually like have everything tradable, you reach a point where people would just craft items so fast that they flood the market with infinite items, I feel like, and they just snowball making profit.
The double-edged sword.
It would just exacerbate the whole problem of like there's going to be like 5 people crafting the items and everyone just buys them, right?
Yeah, and also it makes the problem that it's not worth for a player to actually use the craft themselves even worse, because you could just sell it and make the money and buy the item. Like it makes people engage in craft even less, I feel like, if they make everything tradable.
In regards to ashling, I don't agree with that, because you could just choose not to run it, right? You like, if I want an ashling, I don't run my safe house, or I don't run my Katarina. I know that kind of like hamstrings me from getting rewards from the rest of the syndicate. So I guess it's not a good solution, but I also feel like it sucks, because if you do run the safe house and you have nothing to use it on, you're forced to sell it, and you can't unless you use like an external program. So as I said, it's like a double-edged sword, right? You can't fucking solve it for anyone. It's like either you solve it for make it everything tradable, and then as you get into the issue where the 1% becomes even more 1% and people complain about that, or you don't do it and then everyone complains about not being craftable. It's like a lose-lose scenario for GG and for also the player base, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult. It's just going to be way tougher if they try and make everything tradable. I mean, it's I wouldn't want to be GGG. I don't think you can solve it. I'm interested to see what they do, and one of the things they are changing is they're making expedition currencies untradeable.
Yep.
How did you guys feel when you heard that?
Not happy.
They're making what untradeable?
Expedition currencies, so the rerolls as well as the currency. So you basically have to do your own 2-gen ROG and stuff.
As a player, I'd like to create value for other people. Like that's why I play Trade League once again. I don't like having to feel like I'm sort of forced to engage in the mechanic to get the most out of my gameplay when I don't like the mechanic. And I think PoE is such a vast game. It's such a game with like so many different things you can specialize in that you don't have to engage with certain things. But if you then know that you're like kind of screwing yourself by not interacting with the mechanic, because you know that if you do 2-gen, you know that you can be making like double what you get, like double of what the material is worth, right? So I don't know. I feel like I'm happy that like I can create value as a player that likes to run maps for people that don't like to run maps. or like I can create value as a delver for people that like to craft, even though I don't like to craft. Like that's what like really draws me into Trade League as a player.
I think it creates also a niche where people just buy the materials and just do the gambling, and they can like min max how they do it or how you craft it. While if you have to farm it yourself, you will like do it way less efficiently because you don't actually focus on the only one content. There's people that only craft with rock all day. There's people that only do 2-gen all day, and you know like how much every material is worth. You know like how much percent you need to like get the deals faster. So like some deals are not worth taking because it's not worth the currency that you could buy in the market. So like there's a lot of min maxing that you can't really do. It's like you lose a lot of depth if you make them non-tradable, I feel like. And going back in the topic of before about the Katarinas not tradable, they could make it like sealable, but it's not tradable, so that you can save it for later, so that you can craft your items whenever you want. But
Doesn't
then
fix it. It's basically just a horticraft bench, right? Because you can just use it on someone else's item in your hideout.
yeah, but it fixes the tuna's problem. The problem tunas had that you can use it on your item whenever you have an item to use it. It feels terrible when you go in Katarina and you're not running it because you don't have an item to put on the bench.
Yeah.
That will fix that problem, and also, it's the same that you can still sell it to people, but you fix. Some people will use it on their items instead of selling it because they can save it.
I agree. I think that would fix it because if you were gonna trade it, you're gonna trade it anyways. Like,
I mean, at the same time, I empathize with GGG because they put these mechanics in there to try and like kind of address the problem we were talking about earlier, where you feel some level of, oh, I could use this myself because it's so hard to trade. But yeah, I mean, I think that ship's kind of sailed already.
I think one of the issues, back to Katarina a little bit, sorry, Ashling, is what they did this league with Ashling, how it annulled a mod and it adds a mod. They did that for the very top end of crafters, right? To sort of like circumvent them creating insane items. But like as a player that's maybe like trying to get something on their item, like imagine using Ashling without metamodding or something like that. Like it's so punishing for the non degenerate crafter base.
It's terrible.
Ashling was like one of the ways that you could actually deterministically say, okay, I'm going to upgrade my item, and it's got a pretty good chance of being a better item. And then they're like, no, remove. Now it's basically you've got a very high chance of destroying your item, which without obviously investing in metamods and stuff like that, it sucks.
Now it's just about getting the 5th mod onto a 6 mod item, right? Like, and it has to be like a % chance for you, which makes sense on the very high end of crafting. But me, imagine I'm a normal player and I'm like, oh, I love Path to Exile. I just got a safe house. I'm gonna run it. I got these boots, and they don't have movement speed. I throw it on. I lose T1 life, and I'm like, I hate this game now, and I uninstall. Or, you're like,
not only you make your item worse, you also pay to make it worse, and you waste so much time to get the safe house. It's like you lose your item, you lose time, and you lose money. It's like a triple.
Yeah.
Also, another thing, I thought like Chris didn't really understand exactly how crafting works at the moment. You tried to explain it in the podcast, Tuna. I remember about the boots that you craft the suffix, you walk over the suffixes and stuff. But I don't think you actually understood how it works.
He doesn't have to.
Yeah, he doesn't have to because he has a team. But yeah,
but he understands.
Kind of terrible right now.
Like, you got to look at Chris is like the umbrella where all the ideas live under. Like, he's the sort of person that tells people like,
yeah,
this is the big idea, like the light bulb kind of, like when a big idea pops up, it's like, this is the idea, and everyone has to fall beyond, like it's sort of like step in line, you know what I mean?
To be fair, I am going to use all my expedition currency way more often because of the change. Like I'm going to gamble on 2-gen when I would not have before. And I'm sure all of us are, right? If you get expedition's really good, everyone knows it. So like, of course, we're all going to use our currency now. So that's us doing the mechanic more. Like, yeah, it sucks. I'd rather sell it, but like, I'm going to engage with it now. So they succeeded.
Opportunity cost once again. If you don't do it, then you just wasted your time doing the expedition. It's either going to be like you're going to use the expedition currency more often, right? Or you're just not going to do expedition at all.
But
when you
Yeah.
see
do
it,
you
you're
like
gonna
being
skip it.
forced into doing something that you wouldn't otherwise do?
No,
You're kind of getting forced into it, right? You wouldn't do it. Like, if you had fun doing something, you just farm that content. Like, I feel like they should give us more choices over the content that we want to run instead of limiting them.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
depends. They can't win on this.
Yeah.
it's impossible to fix it.
First
overall.
issue. Again.
It's cursed. It's actually a thing. Cursed game design issues. It's actually like a GDC. But yeah, it's definitely a tough one. I guess kind of like fast forwarding a little bit. We were talking about 3.16 earlier, and now we were talking about crafting. In 3.17, they've gone ahead and say the Conquerors probably aren't going to be around. And they said, and I quote, "We're potentially stripping Endgame back quite far." That's what Chris said to us. Stripping it back quite far. What does that mean? To me, that means Conquerors aren't going to be, there's not going to be influence items. That's how I interpreted that. I don't know if that's true, but that's how I heard it.
We don't know.
I mean, speculation-wise, we can say that, like, I know I have to go through this gameplay cycle of having to kill stairs and whatnot as, like, part of our meta progression. Make it, like, an optional thing. Go to farm, I guess. Maybe. That's
I
how
think it goes
perceive
without saying. Definitely. I would say that the Awakener Orb, as well as the influences, are probably going to be relegated to either non-existence or niche content. So we're going to get something new, which could be a premier crafting system, of course. But another thing I wanted to point out here is Chris actually said that if they don't get 3.17 right, the game will probably die. He actually said that. Do you guys share that opinion? Like he straight up said that if they don't nail it, it's probably going to die. That's what he said.
Die relatively. People that will never stop playing Path of Exile.
Yeah, but I mean that's what he said. I'm just saying what he said. Not
it's just because I feel like the team has grown so big that they have to meet certain benchmarks and expectations, right? But in regards to like die, maybe that's a little bit extreme, but he also followed that up with a lot of confidence, saying, "We know we're not up."
Yeah, I think that they're most likely going to nail it. And one of the things they did talk about was reducing some of the friction in trade, right? And we asked plenty of questions about friction and trade and, loot and all sorts of stuff like that. But the thing that really stuck out to me is that they want to reduce the amount of purchases you need to make for map juice. And they were talking about potentially rolling that juice into some form of system which you accumulate without having to trade. What was your guys' reaction to that?
I think that's great. That's great. Like lowering the trade is always good. I feel like there's so much trading needed right now. And going back to the question before, sorry, what was the question before? I had a point. I forgot. Like the question was
3.17 might kill the game if it's bad.
Oh, okay. I feel like, yeah, I remember now my point. So I wanted to say that basically they have a really fast content cycle every 3 months, right? As long as they introduce new content, it's really hard for the game to die, I feel like. Because just having new, fresh stuff added to the game will bring a lot of people back. Even though if they change a lot of stuff, I think, I don't know, it's really hard for the game to die with the current content cycle that they have right now. It's other games go on for like half a year or like even a year without any patch and they still survive. And PoE has so much content compared to other games. I really think it's not in danger of dying.
I wonder why you said that then, because this is obviously the money man, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about how he snaps his fingers and millions of dollars they go away when they're developing Path of Exile 2. So I think there could be a world in which, if they stumble for 2 or 3 leagues, following 3.17, they don't nail it. There may be a way, there may be a world in which the development costs of PoE 2 kind of exceed how much they're earning. I don't know if that's true, but I imagine he wouldn't have said that for no reason at all.
Could be, but all of these things, business world, like, the investors do this at a cost,
that's
obviously.
Tencent.
But yeah, like, do you know what I mean? I feel like he is very confident that's the Path of Exile, and he sees a future for the game.
Yeah.
And like he wouldn't just let go, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, like, let's say that they do make a lot of the juice baseline, right? And by the way, the follow-up question to this was, what do they think about lead mechanic bloat, and do they have any plans for that? And, you know, the response from Chris was they identified that and that they are open to allowing for more agency over what lead mechanic you might want to run.
That's great.
So, you know, if you combine both of those, you know, there may be a world in which, I don't know, he didn't confirm this, but this is my speculation here. There may be a world in which you can, like, potentially just juice your map with Legion, just because that's the one you want to do. You've got, like, free Legion juice. I think that specifically would be incredibly empowering for not just the end game players, reducing their trade, but everybody. Yeah. You know, like, you can, like, everyone's going to get in on the fun juice. There won't be any economic barriers to entry or anything like that. What do you think that's going to do to the game? Do you reckon everything's just going to be worthless?
No, I think it's just going to make more mastery in specific types of content. Like, if you look at the way I see this is, you know, the way first Harbingers were introduced, right? Where you could Alk and go, and it wasn't the most profitable, but you could just Alk and go and kill Harbingers without any juice, and it would be just fine, right? You'd make like a few X an hour. Like, yeah, at the very start it was absolutely broken, dropping like mirror shards and stuff. But once that was fixed, you know, I think that was some pretty good content, right? Like, which is what I perceive this is gonna be like. Alka map, and you're pretty much guaranteed a lead mechanic, but it's not gonna be like the most that you can get out of map.
Yeah, I would really like that because buying Scarab sucks. Go on, Ellie.
You were saying that the price of stuff is going to be worthless if there's a lot of juice in the maps, right? But we have like an inherent weight to every item that you have to pick it up. You're kind of like, items are almost never going to be worthless because they have a use in the economy. Like every you can make money off of pretty much every item in the game if you use it correctly. Like all the currencies, you can use them in other ways. You're not forced into like use them one way. You can use them however you want. You can use them on different items. Also, like the weight of every item that you have to actually pick it up. So people are not going to undersell something because if it takes like 1,000 clicks to, I don't know, to get like, or 100 clicks to get a Sayula stone or like a Bridgestone, people are not going to sell it for a super low price because it takes so much time. And also, like, Iron players are going to remove it from their filter as well. So I think even low-tier materials are going to retain some value. They're not going to go to zero. And there's not going to be, like, a crazy inflation unless they drop, like, full stacks of splinter shards and stones and stuff like that.
I do agree with that.
It will never be as bad as fracturing 100% daily maps and dropping full stones from the ground, and stacks and stacks of splinters of everything. Like, there's not going to be that much bloat in the economy. It's, like, nearly impossible.
Nothing was worth anything when 100% daily was.
I agree. But, like, let's say that, like, you know, every player can run Blight guaranteed on that map, right? Mm-hmm. That has to have some impact on the price of blighted maps, for example, right? That it's true. It has to. Like, they're not going to be at the premium prices they are at now. So I imagine that you're probably going to see a lot less value. Like, let's say that 10% of players in the Atlas juice, right? They use Scarabs. If you suddenly open up juicing to 90%, the other 90%, you know, that's 10 times the amount of items, right? And they can all pick exactly what they want to do. You know, that's probably going to have some effect on prices, I would say.
A little bit, but also you got to keep in account that the amount of, like, if blighted maps become really cheap, more people run blighted maps because they get so much more profit out of how much they cost relatively, and the more people run them, then the more expensive blighted maps become, and go like fluctuate between people like flocking to certain types of content because it's too cheap, and then farming the hell out of that content, and then, you know, then it becomes less worth it. It's just like the economy always ends up balancing itself out. If that's one thing Path of Exile has right, is like the economy is just it's like actually perfect player-driven economy.
I think that's true for some things, but we did see the complete collapse of certain items in Ritual, like Breachstones. Like, you know, some of them were 1 chaos, right? So it can happen where stuff becomes literally worthless.
Yeah, but Breachstone is like, that's like dead content, right? Like, that's content that's like, what do you get out of Breachstone?
They also buff them now. You drop
old
the
bridge-
blessing, which makes your bridgestones go up in tier. So it increases the value inherently because
Yeah.
it gives way more XP. People use them for experience. Like having more stuff, I think is just gonna, in the economy, is just going to make people run more of what they want in the long run. And maybe it's gonna make getting like easier, like low end gear and stuff easier as well.
Yeah, I
But
mean, if you
it'll
wanted to
take
run
a lot.
Harvest, you could just run Harvest, right? That would
Yeah.
be pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's as long as there's some sort of like opportunity cost involved with it. I think it's going to be really good for the game. You'll be able to play how you want to play, which was quite exciting. Overall, I think it's going to be a massive change. I'm not sure when we're getting at 3.16 or 3.17 or beyond, but Chris did say that it was on the cards. It's something they are doing, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I think overall, our discussion though, I'm really hopeful. Stuff we talked about.
Yeah,
You know?
there's a
like
lot.
the timeline is like so condensed and there's so much stuff coming. So it's like
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried because I mean they're making all these massive changes in 3.16, and then they're gonna just throw it all in the bin for 3.17 because they've gone on record saying that it's gonna be a completely new end game. Maven might not be there. All the Conquerors and Cirrus might not be there. Who knows what's gonna be there? And this is one of the things that Chris said. They want to bring back a lot of what has been successful in the past for the Atlas. We don't know what that means, but that's what he said. So. Who knows? Like everything is open to interpretation there.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, we can know what they're gonna plan.
But that's what's exciting, right?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Hard to imagine that Ritual was pretty much last year, right? We got one league, and then it's going to be the same time as it was with Ritual. So it's like one more league away until we're at Ritual time.
That's crazy.
It's actually insane. Yeah, it's crazy. So the other thing that was talked a little bit about was builds. All right. So from GGG's perspective, working as intended, are you guys happy with that assessment? Like they seemed reasonably happy with all nerfs, with the exception of flasks and mana. That's the two that they highlighted.
You go.
I was more just thinking out loud. But
Okay.
yeah, go on.
My take is that the high-end nerfs were justified. I think they shouldn't have nerfed like all the low-end skills. I think I said it in the last podcast as well. If you nerf like a lot of the damage of the like skills and builds that weren't used as much, they should have, like on the support gem, they nerfed a lot of the support gems. They should have actually buffed the gem itself to bring it in line with the rest of the gems.
They went from like the top down, right? Like I do understand what you mean, but it was more like you gotta think of it as like the way he presented it is either we buff monsters or we nerf everything, and he didn't want to buff monsters, so instead he nerfed everything. So how else would they have done it? I know they could have, like brought lightning tendrils stronger, but like I know some things are like just not cool, like brands just cool. It's a big balance issue, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the game has just run away from them, right? Like, I mean, we asked them about melee. That was one of the questions, and we were like, basically, like, Chris, what's going on, man? And he's like, I'm a melee player, I know. And he's just like, we just can't fix it right now. That's what they were like. So it's like, what are we meant to say to that?
I mean, there are melee skills that work. Rage Vortex is really strong. Lightning Strike is really strong. But the components that make them really good is the mechanic that it's kinda range.
Yeah.
So actual full melee like strikes are kinda in
bad spot.
Like melee strikes are kinda in a bad spot, or like
But
it feels pretty bad.
The whole argument about one thing that Chris did bring up that I really actually agreed with was that like it was sort of like in line with when he was talking about aspirational content and what we mean by build viability. I think this whole build viability argument is not a good one that we should. It's not a good argument. Like, yeah, some skill gems are not as strong, but certain things excel in certain things, and
True.
not everything can be viable for everything, and that's just how the game has become. Like, imagine like, if I don't know, back in the old Atlas, the guy's farming with his Wind Ripper in like T2 barrel chambers or something, and then someone will come in the chat like, oh, "Can I kill Sirius with this?" That's like what we have currently. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like
It's pretty
people would be
bad.
like, "Yeah, but it can't kill Sirius 8. It's trash." And you're like, "Bro, I'm a Wind
It's
Ripper build. What the hell, dude?" Like, and that's just something that's changed recently that I've seen. It's just a whole shift of opinion of everything has to be viable for everything or it's trash. And I think that's really bad. And I think that's a player issue more than a game issue.
I think it is also the game though. Like, I mean,
Yeah, the game has
you
forced
didn't
us
have-
into that. It's true.
if you didn't like when you're mapping, if you didn't have the option to do the Conquerors, you didn't have the option to do Sirius, and you could sell it, I think there'd be a lot less, but can it kill Sirius 8?
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, it wouldn't be a thing. You could just sell it to the boss killers and they'd do it for you, right? And I think that's where the game really breaks down right now, for me at least. Like, I hate that I have to do Sirius. I hate
agree.
it.
Yep.
I actually agree entirely with that too.
Back in the days, people used to have multiple characters and you just log in the other character and kill the boss. But now, like, people tend to just min-max one character so much that you can do all content, so you don't have to relog every time because it's so annoying to do.
It doesn't help that Sirius is one of the most punishing builds for squishy bosses for squishy builds.
Yeah.
Phase 2 with the bzzz beams, it's like, come on, dude. If you get hit once, you're basically dead. It sucks.
And the fact that you can like jump out of your screen makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because like
It's
you look at
awful.
any other boss arena in the game, and bosses can never actually jump out of your screen.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, that's the
I'd
worst
rather
part.
I'd rather honestly do Maven on my bow character than I'd rather do Sirius. That's just my opinion there. It's pretty terrible.
I think overall it's pretty badly designed when you compare it to Uber Elder or Maven. Maven's like, yeah, Maven's hard and it's kind of annoying for people that can't memorize, but overall I feel like it's pretty fair, right?
Yeah, I think the only unfair ability in Maven is potentially the ice bolts. You know, you can get off screen by that. Like if she teleports and instantly does it, you can get whacked. But other than that, it's pretty fair.
Her voice line is very. Thing is, like, she has like a pre-voice line to it.
Cascade of Pain, yeah.
Yeah. But then when she says "ha," that's when she starts shooting, right?
Yeah.
So that you kind of have like a little bit of like a, I know it's happening. I should be running sideways. I think.
Yeah.
It only
No,
becomes
definitely.
really an issue when you get into the last phase and lasers are there. But the fight shouldn't be easy. Like a end game fight.
Agreed. Yeah. 100%. One thing that we've left it till last this time, but we got to talk about it. I want to talk about it, and that is the PTR, the public test realm, aka hard mode, aka Wilson mode. I guess first thing is, you guys gonna play it now that we know exactly what it is. It's pretty disgustingly like, ugh. You know, we're talking talk to a vendor to fill up your potions. You know, you get kicked back to the start of the zone instead of respawning at the waypoint for the boss. Ugh. What do you guys think?
I don't have any strong opinions about hard mode because I'm probably not going to play it. And if they want to have it in the game, I don't see why not. It's just something extra. I'm fine with it. As long as they keep upgrading and like updating the game, I'm fine with it. Like, it shouldn't take off. I think it should help them develop the game, right? Because they can test stuff there. So I'm fine with it as long as it's helping the game out.
Yeah, that's pretty much all it boils down to.
I'm not going to play it though.
So the way Chris
I'm gonna
explained it, and I had to watch this multiple times to get this, is that changes which don't involve the source code of the game will potentially be tested in hard mode. So it's essentially a test realm for their ideas. Now, what does that mean? So a thing like Loot 2.0, a fundamental change to how loot functions in the game, cannot be tested in hard mode. Basically, anything that messes with percentages or variables or anything like that can be, but nothing that's game breaking. So flasks, for example, the flask rework couldn't have been tested in hard mode beforehand. So it's kind of a very limited testing bed, and it's more like kind of like a test of Chris's philosophy and ideas, I think.
The thing that scares me about hard mode is that if not many people play that, and also it's really hard to get resources, right? How are you gonna like efficiently test something? Like if, for example, if you have to do something in the end game and it's like a really, really hard mode that you don't have resources in and everything's punishing, how are you gonna efficiently test for something that people in softcore do like 100 times faster than the harder mode that you're playing?
So I think the things that they're going to be testing, which I imagine is what they're most interested in, is what if they removed the skill gem vendor, right? The Lily Wrath. And then what if they also removed the skill gem vendor of like, Act 1, 2, 3, 4, how you can buy the gems? What would that do to the game? Because that's how Path of Exile used to be before they added all of those in. And stuff like Chain, the Chain gem was a chase item. People actually cared about that gem. What would happen if that was in the game? And they'll be able to test that and see. What happens if they reduce the amount of items that drop by 70%? They'll be able to test that, and maybe that some way, shape, or form makes it into the game in some way. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to go on or what's going through their head in that way. But it's fair to say that it's there to test crazy ideas. And Chris went on record and said that it also serves as almost like a kind of like a protection from nerfs for softcore trade players. Like, you're not going to get as many nerfs. Basically, that's what he said.
I think he sort of just said that to make us a little bit more relaxed about the whole situation. But regardless of how we look at it, so long as it's not taking up too many resources, like, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it does at all. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's free content, right? Like, even if you play it for like 3 days, that's 3 days that you spent playing that instead of I don't know, playing League of Legends or whatever you lose to play. Talking to chat, by the way.
He was talking to Marcelli. I know it.
No, but essentially, I just feel like it's fine, right? But the one thing I don't like is the further fragmentation of the community. I like Trade League to be a big, happy place where everyone trades and everyone's doing... Like, it's also why I don't like private leagues personally, because every time a private league happens, say like BPL or Gauntlet, Trade League dies. I can't get the trades I want. There's so much less stuff going on, and it just makes me feel bad as the Trade League lover. But that's nothing wrong with the people organizing the leagues or the leagues themselves. It's just that, like, if you give the opportunity for people to go do something else, if they think they're gonna have more fun doing it, they're gonna do it. So, I mean, I just don't personally like fragmenting the community even more, especially since it's a pretty small community overall.
Yeah.
But for example, the PvP version that they made, what is the name?
Royale.
The Battle Royale. Yeah, there's a lot of people that not a lot, but there's some people that play that. And that's nice. It's just something extra to the game that we wouldn't have otherwise. I feel like adding another mod is fine. The only problem is going to be like the community fragmentation, as Tuna said.
Royale's different though. That has dedicated developers, right? Because like there's that guy. He got up. He was the designer for Royale. He's on Reddit, right? That's obviously his job. So that's someone who's not on the game. But I think it's fine at the same time. Brings more attention to the game, more stuff for people to do. It's fair to say there was like a ton more to discuss here. Lots of stuff happened. I'm sure that Tuna talks about it on stream. I'm going to be making quite a few videos, but I think it's fair to say 3.16 is going to be a massive shakeup to basically the entire game. No matter which mode you play, something's going to change in a major way. So the way you build characters is probably going to be different in some way because of defense. The way you're going to be doing Atlas is going to be different, and the way you're going to be farming in the end game is going to be different, and there's potentially going to be new content as well, all on top of the next league as well, which Chris has gone on and said is going to be, it's a good one. That's what he said.
Really, really exciting. For sure.
Yeah, don't they always say that?
Yeah, they actually always do, Elisha, but hopefully it's a good one, as in like Delirium or Legion, but we'll see.
No delve? Really? An unfriend. Friend from this.
What the? Anyway, are you guys? What's your key? What's the thing you're most excited about in either 3.16 or are you just like super excited for 3.17?
Both, right? But actually, the more I think about it, maybe it's because like I'm a short-term smooth brain, but I'm obviously more excited about 3.16 than I am of 3.17 because I want I want the game to be better sooner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I really look forward to seeing the directions they go now that they've sort of been a lot more receptive to feedback and whatnot. So, yeah.
I really want
3.16.
more aspirational content and lower trading. Those are my two things that I'm most
Yeah.
excited about.
Well, you're in luck, dude.
It's coming.
They definitely hear us loud and clear on that one, which is very fortunate.
Yeah.
For me, honestly, most looking forward to, hopefully they live up to this as well, testing out all the Atlas passives and the new combos and, seeing how they all work. And maybe there's some new ones or maybe there's some reworked ones. I'm really looking forward to doing
Yeah,
that.
that's really exciting. Like how much content we had in the Alice rework where it's just like, all right, now we got to refigure everything out again.
Yeah.
That's an exciting time as a, maybe less so as like a normie player, but like as a content creator, it's so good. Like,
I don't
but
know.
I feel like
there's
maybe as a normie player too, you'd be excited to be like, okay, let's test this. Maybe nobody's figured this out, and I'll try it.
for me at least, I wasn't. Someone told me about the Harbinger stuff, and that's kind of like what started a lot of the craze. Like someone was doing that, and they told me. So a lot of people do experiment. They just either keep it to themselves, or it gets to us later.
Cool.
But that was back in Ritual. But yeah, I guess it's gonna be an exciting time for everyone. Can't wait.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we could probably bang on for another hour, but we'll wrap it up there. Plenty of good times to be had coming up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast and stuff. Thanks for coming.